Are you ready?
Oh, yeah!
From parts unknown and into your home, this is the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast. Now, here's your host, Groovy G.
Hello there, folks. On this episode of the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast, we take a close-up look at a Reggie Parks made WWF block logoed winged eagle. That's coming your way right now.
You're watching the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast. For your official Groovy G Belt Podcast merchandise, check out www.groovyGshop.com.
Debuting in 1988, the Winged Eagle is one of the most recognisable and iconic championship title belts of all time, held by a Hall of Fame list that started with Hulkamania and finished with Stone Cold Steve Austin and the dawning of the Attitude Era. For a decade, this was one of, if not the most revered and sought after wrestling titles. Now, this particular belt is exactly the same as the belts that you would have seen on TV. It was made by the original maker, Reggie Parks, using the exact same artwork and exact same logos. Reggie Parks and Dave Millican were allowed to make versions of this belt with the WWF block logo up until 2016. Now, nobody can legally use that logo. The WWE charged around a $1,000 fee to use that WWF block logo, and that fee was passed on to customers. So a lot of belt collectors decided to use an alternative logo, such as a crown, FWF, or no logo at all. Now, the Winged Eagle's first TV appearance was February 5th, 1988 on the Main Event #1. However, in my interview with the maker of this belt, Reggie Parks, that you can catch right here on the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast, Reggie told me that he actually gave the first Winged Eagle that he made to Hulk Hogan at a house show in Arizona, and that's where the Winged Eagle actually made its in-ring debut. Also in that interview, Reggie Parks talked to me in detail about how and who designed the belt, the leather cuts, and the other elements like the twisted bars and where the belt tip came from. If you haven't already done so, make sure you check out episode number 2 of the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast, where you can hear that interview in full. Now let's get into this belt, and as I've previously mentioned, this particular belt is exactly the same as the belts you would have seen on TV. Reggie Parks and Dave Millican struck a license deal with the WWE, and they were allowed to make versions of this belt with the WWF block logo up until 2016, when that license deal expired. A common feature on the belts made during that license deal is a stamp on the leather which says it's a licensed replica, and also a small inscription etched into the main plate which also says it's a licensed replica. Now, this belt does not have those features. One possible reason for this is it was made pre-license deal, so those indications were not required, or possibly Reggie just forgot, or he didn't bother putting them on this belt. It's not unique in missing those indicators. There are also a few Reggie Parks made belts that don't have them, but it does make this belt as accurate to the belts that you would have seen on TV as you can get. If we start on the left hand side, we can see the Reggie Parks signature stamp, his tooling in the snap boxes, and also the WWF block logo stamp. Here are the small side plates with the wrestlers. Now, this artwork was actually taken from an old encyclopedia. A belt collector and designer by the name of Adam Icon Gibbons recently found the source of this and other clip art used to design these belts. And here it is. These are the actual original images used by Tucson Trade Engravers and Reggie Parks to design their belts. Now, Adam Icon Gibbons will be appearing on an upcoming episode of the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast, and he will tell us the full story about how he came across this artwork, so make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss that episode. Now let's go back to the belt, and you can see the amount of detail in the design and just how crisp the etching is. Let's move across to the main plate. And this belt has the additional Relief World banner. Again, this is a feature that is sometimes used on Winged Eagles and sometimes not. And if we look up close at the eagle, we can really start to see the crispness of the etching and all of the detail in the eagle's feathers. Now, because this is one of the most popular designs of all time, and also because it can no longer be made by the original maker, this belt is also one of the most bootleg belts out there. The usual signs for spotting an unauthorized copy is the leather won't have that signature stamp, and the tooling won't look as accurate. The artwork and the logos will also be inaccurate, and the etching in the plates will sometimes not be as crisp as the real deal. Let's move on to the side plates on the right hand side, and again we can see the depth and the crispness of that etching. Here's the logo plate. And the female snap boxes. It also has the WWF block logo stamped into the snap boxes and the tip. Now this is the 2 shell tip, and like all real belts, it is one solid piece. Let's flip the belt over so we can see the backing, and it's just one smooth piece of leather covering the bolts on the back. This leather cut too, you can see up the top the wings of the eagles, just the tips of them are just peeking out from behind the leather. Let's flip it over and I'll try and show you how the bars are attached to the main plate and how they come away from the leather. Now this is one feature that replicas of this belt don't do. On the replica belts that you can buy from the WWE shop, the twisted sidebars are separate from the main plate and they're attached to the faux leather strap, so they don't come away like this. So there you have it. That's a Reggie Parks made WWF block logoed winged eagle. Now let's take a sneak peek at what's coming your way on the next Groovy G Championship Belt podcast.
On the next episode of the Groovy G Championship Belt podcast.
And it's not very often that you will talk to an expert who has literally written the book on a subject, but that is exactly what we are going to do. On the next episode of the Groovy G Championship Belt podcast, we will be joined by the author of the 10 Pounds of Gold and Big Gold books, the Mid-Atlantic Gateway's Mr. Dick Bourne. In the meantime, make sure you don't miss a thing by subscribing to this YouTube channel, and you can join in the conversation on Twitter at Groovy G Belt Show or on Facebook. Until then, take care. It's bye for now.